welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and Happy New Year to a new episode of the X Button and a new season. I am one of your hosts, Alejandro, and with me is my lovely co-host,
Paul. Hey, everybody. How's it going?
Paul. It's been quite a break. I haven't seen your face in a while, so you're looking...
I know, right? I forgot what you looked like.
curly.
I am... There's one thing that I can be. It is always going to be curly, yes.
Yeah, Paul, in the 3/4 weeks that we were, off, how you been?
It's been a good holiday season. I'm at a point in my adult life where, all the adults like to give you either socks or a gift card if you're lucky. And then sometimes it's,
Yes.
hey, you're not a kid anymore, so I'm going to stop giving you gifts. And I'm like, cool. Hope we could still be friends or whatever. And then I never talk to them. But the one cool thing about that is that I get to catch up on all the backlog of games that came out this year and find a lot of hidden gems. That's what I've been
Now,
really
real
doing.
quick, were you able to catch up on many or just on one? Because I went in the same way and I failed.
Well, I started off really optimistic about things, and then one specific game that we'll talk about today completely derailed my plans. However, I did get to really get a good chunk out of 2-ish games that found their way into the top 10 that I was not planning on. So that's at least a victory for me. How about you?
So, because I was traveling in family, it's like I could barely play anything. I was hoping I was going to play a little bit more, and then I just ended up... I did beat one that ended up sneaking into my top 10. We're definitely going to talk about that because this is our Game of the Year show. And then there were other things that, because I'm traveling, I started playing my Switch more, so I was using more of that tiny, old sucker. But now I've been playing a little bit more now that I have kind of settled in where I am now, instead of being at a family's place where I was. So... But enough of that, Paul, because this is the X Button Podcast, our gaming podcast that posts every Thursdays from 2 p.m. onwards, God willing, available in the YouTube channel Escape Gaming, as well as most audio services around the world, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the like. You can find links in the RSS feed at anchor.fm/escape-gaming. If you enjoy our show, give us a like and subscribe. So, since we're starting a new year, Paul, a new season, this is a new episode 1, kind of like how graphic novels do it. It's start a new thing, do another number 1 so people don't see, oh, they've been going for 83 episodes. That sounds intimidating.
I've been a Hydra agent all along.
Yeah. So now we start from scratch. Oh man, that Captain America number 1, I remember that.
I was living rent-free in my head just a couple days ago, and I was like, gosh, they really went for some weird stuff anyway. Yes. But yeah.
So Paul, we're basically starting in quote-unquote evergreen episode, which is basically how we like starting a year, talking about our favorite games from last year / honorable mentions / the games that didn't quite live up to what we wanted out of it. We could call them most disappointed, but I want to keep it slightly more positive because I still enjoyed some of those. So
I had to give it to you. Yeah, I'm glad we decided on that because there were several of them I genuinely enjoyed, but then I also had to say, well, it did technically disappoint me quite a bit. So I'm glad we're going to be able to talk about those, especially with the way that they hurt us.
Mm-hmm. Oh yes, I'll say, Paul. We already gave our thoughts about 2022 as a whole. It was a year that overall was good. It could have been great for me had it been more even killed without all the yawning gaps. I will say though, there were a lot of good games that came out that year that I was like, yeah, I didn't have to sneak in anything from previous years to try to pad out lists. Everything from my list is 2022. Shockingly, I
feel like most of mine are, but I didn't actually look through. You know what? Yeah, I think all of mine might actually be this year.
I'll let you know. I'll let you know because like we did last year. I don't know what you have picked in either of your lists for honorable mentions, most disappointing, and top 10 because I want to be surprised. I want to kind of give you a surprise. I don't think I'm going to be able to swerve you this time like I did last year, because we've been talking more within a full year's time compared to how my Game of the Year last year happened when we were now recording. So. Enough of that, Paul. Let's start with the honorable mentions. So basically, for people, our criteria for honorable mentions, these games could have made a top 10. They just kind of sneak right below. Yeah. So start with you. Start me with your first honorable mention, Paul.
So mine, in no real order, outside of just kind of wanting to talk to him, was one that really snuck in, and if I had played it longer, it probably would have breached the top 10, honestly, and that is Dragon Quest XI.
Yeah.
I
So not a 2022 game. That's one of them. So.
Yeah, there it is. So that was honorable mention.
Mhm.
So that had some extra steps to it, and I only played. I looked at it. It was like 10 hours of it, and I was like, I can't put that in a top 10 with only 10 hours out of a Dragon Quest game because I don't know how that's going to affect me later
That's
on.
100-hour game.
Yeah. So I was like, I'm not going to go that route. I'm not going to commit. I just wanted to at least mention how much fun I had with the brief time that I really played it. And if I'd played more, it probably would have gone higher. So yeah, I really didn't want to talk too much about it and waste time on it when we could talk a lot more about other things that we're more interested in. But I love the art style. I love what they did with the stylization that aged like fine wine compared to some other games. And I really hope to be excited for whatever is next for that series, honestly.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, so did you want to go ahead and do 1-to-1 and so you talk about your 5?
Yeah, 1-to-1.
All right, go for
my
it.
first one, like how I put my honorable mentions is like just based on the release when they came out in the year. So my first honorable mention, Sifu.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So the first game we played this year, based on the arrangement that we had, that like action samurai game that was like super tough. Like at first, that game like kicked my ass in ways that I can't describe. It's like it requires a level of pitch perfect coordination between how you like tap in your parries and do the weird thing of holding the shoulder button and the sticks to do like the weird dodging that I didn't think it was that smooth, and it required a lot of trial and error that at first was very it ended up being more frustrating than I wanted it to. However, like, that's a game that I want to shout out how like throughout the year they kept updating it. Like they added a lot of accessibility options that actually helped me finish the game, and I feel like it was an enjoyable way to start the year, and I just appreciate that they were not elitist in the way that they responded to the criticism of like this is like super hardcore game, especially because we know a lot of people that like to go to bat for the hardcore games, be like that is not for you. It's like that's just for the hardcore. And Slow Clap was like slowly kept adding more and more to make that game more accessible for more.
And they continued even after we both finished playing it that they added a ton of customizability for your playthrough, not just customization for your character. And it made me want to one day, like when there's some downtime this year, if there is any, to maybe go back and play it with all of the new
we'll definitely
stuff
talk about that the next episode when we do most anticipated.
But I'll let you finish up with.
So just fun indie style game, like one of the first few like that Sony actually put their like money's worth, because that was initially a PS5 exclusive. It's now on Switch, which I can't even imagine how that game runs there or even looks.
The style helps it, but the work that it'll put on your thumbsticks is going to break the crap out of your Joy-Cons.
Yeah, I can't imagine people playing that and not getting Joy-Con drift. But yeah, fun game. So honorable mention. How about you?
I did want to ask briefly, if we have, like, say I have Sifu somewhere else, do I go ahead and talk about it now?
Yeah.
Okay, I wanted to make sure. Because yes, this game is in my top 10 actually, somewhere that I won't talk about yet. But it really vibed with me. I will say, just like what you said, I agree on like the difficulty kind of turned a lot of people off on it. However, since then they've really worked on their accessibility, customization options, a lot of different quality of life, gameplay enhancements, things like that, to turn what is normally just a very short, okay, sort of it one note-ish game into something a lot better. But for me personally, I have a bit of a bias on, as we talked about last night, martial arts and hack and slash especially, which sometimes it really feels like it when you get into your flow, and it just feels so good. And something that one of my favorite YouTubers mentioned is, if this company could get the hold of like a big IP like Matrix or something and make it would be great style.
The PC version had the mods that they like mod in Neo and the Agent Smith fight in one of the levels,
and that alone just gets you excited about the possibilities of what could happen with this. But just as it is, I still enjoyed myself so much, and I would say even more so than some other really big name things. So its position on my top 10 might shock you, but yeah, so I just wanted to at least sing its praises briefly and say that the work that they did after release is really what put it where it is currently for me.
Makes sense.
So,
I knew it would be like in your top 10, because you definitely enjoyed that more than I did. because
Definitely.
you actually stuck with it even more, even after. I stopped playing it after the first week, especially when they said that they were gonna add accessibility. I was like, I'm out. I'm gonna wait for that. I'm not gonna
Yep.
like break
I
my
think I
mind.
got to the final boss on the regular mode before they added the easy mode,
I
and because
never
I was
made it
just
past boss 2. I
I
just
had the
like I gave up.
tenacity to I was like, I will figure this out because it just feels so good. You could jump straight back into it. And it was one of those games just like with Dark Souls. It's like even if you suck and you have a really bad run, it is just something about the muscle memory that you learn from each game run through that really made me feel like I was doing something awesome. So
Yeah,
anyway,
had it come at a different time, like with not because that was the first of us onslaught of games we got in
yeah,
February. Had we gotten it earlier with like nothing else coming out for like a week or two, I would have stuck around more. But combined with the more games that are coming and hey, we're patching accessibility, I was like, yeah, I'll just wait. And I'm glad I did because playing it with the accessibility options they added like in June and September, like throughout the year,
yes.
just made it more enjoyable. But yeah, fun game. Like that's why it's in my honorable mention, and it was in your top 10. So what's your next one, Paul?
My next one was Ghostwire Tokyo.
Okay.
So I just at least wanted to put it in there because it's like what you said, where they was almost in this category of games I wish I'd played
Uh huh.
more, because it had everything that I really enjoyed out of certain games, where it was like a little double A, but it had character, it had like a cool premise, it was like really pretty as
Mm-hmm.
well,
Yeah.
for what it was really trying to do. It was ambitious, so it was like even in the end it was like a first person shooter, but it had such a unique spin on it that I was like, I feel like I could get into this. And then like the world kept expanding, you could
Mm-hmm.
do cool things with like collecting the spirits and putting them into fake payphones. I was like, this is just such cool little world building stuff. Like somebody put some work into this, and I really enjoyed it. And what really kept it out of anything higher and stopped me from playing it is that once I realized there's really only three elements to use and you get them so quickly, there wasn't a lot of gameplay evolving evolution that
Mm-hmm.
really kept me wanting to play it.
You lost
Beyond
steam.
that, yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
lost steam immediately because I knew that after a certain point I was like, well, I've kind of played the whole game now, unless there's something that they just didn't show me that I couldn't find searching it. Because after a while I was like, is there something else? Like, are there more weapons, more spirit abilities? And they were like, oh, that's kind of it. So that's what kind of led me to burn out on it. But I at least wanted to mention it because it was a cool concept, and I hope they make like a sequel where they just build on that.
Yeah.
How about you?
If we did a category of the games we wish we played more of, that would be one because I only played it the day we got it, and then I never went back to it. I enjoyed what I played, but again, it's like I played so little of it that I can't really put it anywhere like in what we're gonna talk about. But it was cool, and I wish I could play more of it. So my next one, Paul, Tunic.
Hey,
Yeah, so the Zelda-like Fox top-down game that initially came to Xbox Game Pass and then came to PlayStation later in the year. That's a game with such a lovely vibe and recreate and tries to capture the Zelda vibe like as close as someone can get. It also gets so hard, like so
yeah,
quick, that I just dropped. And I was like, that was one of those games that when I'm in the mood for like feeling like I want to get my teeth kicked in, especially after a year where I played so many games that just kick your teeth in. We're definitely going to talk about that later. That was just something that I just enjoy his vibe so much that I wanted to at least honorably mention it. So
definitely. This is actually also on my honorable mention list, so I guess I'll just both talk about that and then just go into that as
yeah,
my other
that's my
one.
next one. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, Tunic, I remember talking to you about it where I kind of knew of it. I'd seen little gameplay segments, and then when I sat down and turned it on my new Series S that I got,
Yes.
um, I it was magical. I was enjoying the heck out of it. I felt like I was I was finding a forgotten Legend of Zelda game
Mm-hmm.
that I just never played and got to go experience for the first time. And just, I think one of my favorite ideas is the concept that the very skills and abilities you are learning are literal instruction booklet pages from like a Game Boy Advance
Uh huh.
that you're finding. And I was like, I remember, and that is like targeted manipulation for somebody like me who was like, I remember going through that and learning all of these little details of like my little Game Boy Advance Two Towers game and things like
Oh
that.
god, that was such a good game. The
And
Lord of the
like
Rings Game Boy games.
stuff you'd learn in those instruction booklets that were never explained in the game, but you had to read the book to understand it. so I remembered and understood that so intimately, and it was so fun to use critical thinking where I don't know, it didn't feel like the devs were making fun of you for trying to make things super hard for the mystery side of it.
Hmm.
Whereas like, hey, there's a lot of secrets. There's like little pen marks on the instruction booklet. Go check that out. And you find things. You get rewarded really easily. And it really was just the difficulty spike all of a sudden. Where there wasn't really like a ramping up, it felt like. It was just like, hey, you're like wiping everything out, you're good, and then you just immediately get clobbered.
Yeah.
And then also the fact that you can't really fast travel, or at
Hmm.
least I never unlocked it at that
Me
point
neither.
that I
I
wanted.
don't even know it's there. So it's just like that's
Yeah,
kind of we stopped around the same time. It feels like.
it
So
really did. So yeah, that was what really stopped it from being in my top 10. Because if it had gotten maybe just a bit more gradual, couple of quality of life things right there, that would have been just so good. So yeah, that was my. I
your
actually
next
had
one, yeah.
listed as my next one. So go ahead for
Hmm.
your next.
This one I know it's gonna be in your top 10. Uh, this one snuck out the more I thought about it. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2.
Yeah,
So
for you especially, I understand that. So go ahead, tell me
yeah,
more.
it's like let's just say it. The campaign of this game sucked.
Mm,
It just sucked. It was like it was such a disappointment. Like this would have been like in the most disappointing if we were talking about it because I like to be the campaign guy. But why I keep it in the honorable mentions is because the multiplayer and the Spec Ops and Warzone really elevated this package for me in a way that uh, me being the campaign guy that didn't really want to dabble much in multiplayer afterwards because a lot of people are too try hard ish, and I feel like I don't have that kind of dexterity in me anymore. I spent so many days playing this multiplayer just as like my chill. Okay, I'm gonna listen to a podcast. I just want to unwind, and the changes they made that the hardcore were super pissed about really worked in a way to like level the playing field in a way that made it more enjoyable for me. And the co-op missions that we played, the three ones. I know they added the other ones we haven't played. Those were so good. They were so freaking good. I was like, finally, I feel like they get it now because Spec Ops in 2019 sucked balls in comparison. That was such a huge disappointment because Spec Ops was like my mode in Modern Warfare 2 and 3 back in the 360 days. So
survival, man.
and survival was so good. That was also good in Advanced Warfare, even though it was a little harder because of all the jumping around and blah blah blah. But yeah, thanks to a multiplayer, like Modern Warfare 2, like sneaks in my honorable mentions. Had the campaign being better, and that's the thing. Like I tried going back to it, and I played up until the mission again with like a different mindset, and I was enjoying it a little bit more. But that initial weekend that I had with that campaign, I had a miserable time with it. So
I will mention that it is in my top 10, so I'll go ahead and talk about it. But your perspective on it is super valid as well because it's been bumped down a couple
mhm,
of places since as the year went on, the final parts of the year went on even.
mhm,
It just, other things came out that had my attention, had my interest far more. The the campaign, I agree with you completely. It just wasn't to snuff for what really needs to happen out of this
mhm,
big return to the Modern Warfare franchise.
yeah.
And
And it had
however,
brilliant parts. That's the worst part. Is like
yeah,
there's some levels there like yes, yes, but then there were so many levels that dragged on too long. Like the one jumping from car to car started so cool, and then the
yeah,
controls of riding the car and evading the mines, that thing control like booty.
they're
So
trying to add in the concept of Uncharted 4 into a
mhm,
Modern Warfare campaign with all of that ability. There was too much getting thrown at you.
mhm,
Um, but yeah, so jumping from there, just like what you said, the Spec Ops mode was far improved from the first 2019 Modern Warfare. The multiplayer for me, it really stuck with me personally. I know a lot of people didn't really like it as much as 2019's version for some
mhm.
reason, but just like you said,
But
I like the gameplay
I'll
changes.
say that I've been seeing more positive like as the time went on, and we went away from like they changed things and made it worse. So I've seen more love for this multiplayer than the
I,
initial few days.
Yeah, and especially something that I really didn't think I would like as much is the time the countdown for certain abilities to kind of go in practice. I understand far more now because it's more of a progression rather than, hey, we're going to spawn you in with like 4 passive abilities that completely change the way things operate. The nerfs to ghost and certain other things to stop you from even being able to use UAVs, and just, it's like you're making it harder for people to enjoy parts of the game that most people are going to be able to play. So kind of nerfing certain aspects of that, the weird little crow hopping and the sliding and all that stuff. So it's like overall, I felt like it was a more balanced experience. I went back to it right after Christmas to play some of their Christmas themed modes, the additive shipment as the map, and I love shipment for its weird chaotic nature.
Love shipment.
So,
love shipment all the time.
It's it was just fun to mess around with again and just sit back and like mindlessly move my fingers on the controller while I was watching something else almost. And it was just like, this is a good time. I'm enjoying myself. But yeah, it did drop a lot for me. So that's really all I was going to say about that. And on to my
Your
next
next one.
honorable mention. I'm gonna save my best for last. Mafia Definitive Edition was the next one for me.
Okay. Do you play that this year?
I finished it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because it came out way earlier, and I don't know if you remember. Like, I just randomly opened it back up after having played the really terrible intro mission, and then I fell in love with that game. For like a period of like a solid week. And there's something about the mixing of the mechanics of 3 with the just classic Mafia style, the cars, the storyline being actually really good, that I didn't really give it credit for. And during that like weird desert of the middle of the year is when I picked it up on like a deep discount or something, I think, or it came out for free. I don't remember, but
deep discount. It hasn't been given for free yet.
Okay, yeah. So overall, it was just, I really loved. I think his name's Tommy Angelo. Just that, what a name for perfect for Mafia style things. I loved like the look of it. The gunplay was honestly just, I enjoyed the heck out of it. The driving was still really fun in the end, and for some reason the ending of it actually really stuck with me, with the way it plays out, and kind of still tells you like, yeah, it's cool to be in the Mafia until it really isn't all of a sudden, and then it's really bad. So like that weird bittersweet feel to send off both that character and the protagonist of the second character that they added in for this definitive edition was a really nice, like, and the world still spins, the story continues, but as you see, it's just a vicious cycle for all the characters involved, basically almost being murdered by the protagonist of the next game, which is like the cycle that seems to be going on for 3 games now. Yeah. So it's just yeah, it stuck with me, and it was enough that I was like, all right, you know what, I gotta put it on at least honorable mentions, because it didn't play it long, but it was good while it was.
That's your other non-2022 game that you mentioned so far.
So that was at least for pretty much just honorable mentions. I stretched that a little bit, but that was it for me. What's your next one?
This one, I think, is one of the ones that snuck into your top 10 just based on your recent chatter. Midnight Suns. Marvel's Midnight Suns.
Yep.
This one is here because I really like what I played. I barely played it. So I have a personal kind of like philosophy that I am not putting anything on my top 10 that I barely played. So that's why it's in honorable mentions, and I wish I played more of it because it really got me into wanting to try turn-based again. And I get kind of what I said, like you put a property that I like in a genre that I don't really like, and it can get me playing it. And I feel like they have simplified the concept of a turn-based game that uses cards in a way that when they were explaining it sounded really complicated, but in practice it's so like simple. And I feel like people don't talk enough about how much of a quote-unquote dating sim this thing is. Even though if it's not really dating, but it's just like the amount of social interactions you have with your superheroes at the Belfry, I think that's what it was called.
The Abbey, technically.
The Abbey.
Belfry was Gotham Knights.
Okay, yeah, that was the other one. Yeah. We're not gonna talk about Gotham Knights later.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
if I had a nickel for every time I got to hang out with superheroes in some kind of strange 1920s building, I'd have 2 nickels.
Yeah.
Which is not a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice this year.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, but the Abbey was like that's why like I didn't play much of the turn-based because I in the what I played I got stuck at the Abbey, just talking because they had like it's so deep how much writing they put in the ways that you can interact. And I even told you, it's like I had read that it can get crazy how deep the social links get, and I think you're getting there. So
yes,
I hope I get to play more of it, but as of right now, honorable mention.
Yeah, so this, like you said, it did finally sneak into my top 10 somehow, and I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't wanting it there, and I had to give it the prop it's due. One of the best descriptions of this game is came from a comment on a random YouTube video for like finding some item in the map, and it said, normally I cannot stand games like this. Like I abhor them. I hate them. I cannot stop playing this game. Was like the entirety of what it said, and it really resonated with me because, as we've talked about, I think Dragon Quest for me was like that dipping my toe back into turn-based, and I went, oh wait, this is kind of fun actually. Going into this, playing the tutorial mission, which really explained like the core of what you need to understand.
Immediately.
If you can sit through like the 5 to 10 minutes that this one tutorial mission goes through, you get like it walks you through every like step. It doesn't throw you to the wolves. It's like, hey, play this card specifically, watch what happens. This is why. Okay, now do this, now do that, attack this enemy now. And it's like, oh, okay, I get it. And then by the time you're really jumping into it all, you're just juggling all of these balls as you're going through the heroism point system, the regular attacks, the quick moves, the knockbacks, like you're just controlling this entire battlefield. Where I thought at first it was just like dumbed down XCOM, but now it's like, okay, we took XCOM as a first draft and now we're going further into it. So that's it for the gameplay side of it. As far as what you said with the social links, I'm getting far deeper into that than I thought I would. The performances for almost everyone are fantastic. Some of these characters, like I mentioned, Steve Bloom as Wolverine, and Yuri Lowenthal is Spider-Man. I got like a lot of these others that I know the voice and I can't think of the name. But like for anybody that doesn't know, obviously Steve Bloom is like Spike from Cowboy Bebop and a lot of other things. Yuri Lowenthal is Spider-Man from the PS4 Spider-Man. Game. So it's like easy, perfect. Like, oh, that's Spider-Man. That's me. I get it. I just unlocked Captain America. Exactly how you think he would sound.
Have you done the exercises with him?
Not yet. I just got him. But that's one of the first things I want to do. But yeah, like just like what you said, you have hangouts, you have havens, which are specific areas in the map you can find, and you get a one-time bonus to one person. Each of them have different interests on where they like to hang out. When you hang out, you get an option of 3 different things you can like. It's always different per the person. They can like watch a movie with them, play video games, go stargazing, go have a drink with them, and it's like all of these details. It's like if Mass Effect was made today, they'd probably try something like this, and this is far more detailed than I think Mass Effect ever really got back then. And I'm shocked at it, and I love that it's not just romantic interest. It's like you can just be buddies with all of these people, and that's like a big deal. And even though so many of them like legit hate each other, they all like respect you for some reason or another, but that reason is completely different for each character that fits with their personality, and it's crazy. There's like a light and dark balance, which is very clearly not good and evil. It is just how you solve problems. And where like a lot of the Avengers like the light side, a lot of the other Midnight Suns like Blade, Ileana, and Nico, and
the dark side.
Even like Captain Marvel, I think, prefers dark side of things because she's just like, that's their personality. Like, I will beat the crap out of them, I will kill this person if I need to, kind of an attitude. And it all lines up and it all balances out with everybody doing their thing. So anyway, that's just what's most recently on my mind. That's why I took a little longer on it, and that's why it's in my top 10.
Yes.
So,
and you got your say about it. So what's your next honorable mention?
Yeah, so that was I think this is our last honorable mention now, and that is Stranger of Paradise.
Yeah.
I have to at least mention it, and that's why it's here.
It's a special
Because
game for both of us.
it's a special game. It's really it fed your joy and my chagrin for all of, what was it,
A year, yeah,
2021?
one, yeah, up
Yeah.
until its release.
Yeah, up until its release, and then finally going through it last year, realizing we both liked it, and then playing it together on stream for a good
Mhm.
chunk of the main
The 12
storyline.
chapters, the 12 out of
Uh,
20 chapters.
Yes, and you finished it. I haven't quite yet because it's a lot to go back to, but we played enough of it that I have to at least put it here where it's like the mechanics of it, once you get it down, the idea of being able to just switch between classes,
Mhm.
upgrade your weapon system, style, different moves that you can do. Like there was an R1 and an R2, I think, that you could
Mhm.
change what it does based on what part of the combo it's in, which
Mhm.
had a lot of depth to it. That's
Yeah,
like
you
stuff you see
you
in
can
Devil May Cry.
map different combos there that you unlock based on your unlockables and all that. So
So you can juggle, you can add status effects, you can do that, switch to a different class and hit them with a spell, and it's like you just get this balance back and forth. So even though some of the side characters are really one note, not really it for
Mhm.
me, just going from that into the storyline where it's like this one regular guy just is so fed up with the fantasy BS that people speak to him in, and his responses to a lot of that just feed some perfect comedy moments.
yeah, it's yeah. Keep going. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's almost it, where it's just like you get that through each mission, and every like boss you go to fight goes into this big exposition dump of how they're the Dark Lord of whatever it is, and he's just like, I don't care.
Yeah.
At various levels of being very pissed off to just tired, and I was like, I resonate with this so much. So yeah, that's why it's really on my honorable mention. It managed to sneak in despite my best efforts to not give it a chance. It deserves a spot, at least for somebody. If you're tired of games doing those kind of things, just play this and really resonate with Jack.
Yeah.
And now for you.
So that game's in my top 10.
I knew it would be.
It's not good. I was able to fit. That was one of the games I finished this holiday break, and I got to play the last chapters that we were remaining that I hoped we would be able to stream, but that ended up not happening with all the games that came out. And you mentioned in one of the streams, like Stranger of Paradise is the Shrek 2 Final Fantasy. It's just like it's just a funny homage to so many eras of Final Fantasy.
Yes.
The attitude of Jack is just straight up hilarious. Like when the Skeletor, I like to call it the Skeletor, one of those big monsters, like explaining who he is, and then he just like smash cuts to him like running. It's like, I don't give an F who you are, like in just pitch perfect comedic moment. And then there was the water monster that was talking, and then out of a sudden, like Jack is doing the Liu Kang kick, and he like stops him like mid thing. It's like it understands that, because that's the thing. Like the first trailer, legendarily awful. Like the first one that that's how I knew that you hated it, and I used it always to like beat it to a pulp in your mind, like for an entire year. It's like, because it didn't feel like it knew it was funny. Then when we saw the Limp Bizkit clip, we knew it was fun. That's when we knew, they know that it's funny. And then you play that game, you know that they know that it's funny. The end of that game, Paul, it's absolute madness. It's absolute, and also like tragic. It's like it's so tragic, like what ends up happening, because Jack ends up being Jack Garland, the villain of Final Fantasy 1, and how he descends into that villainy. It's hilarious and really sad at the same time, and it manages to like strike that balance, and it's just so ridiculous, because if you think he was just a chaotic dude, just look clips of the end. It's like he starts like cursing with F-bombs, like he just like completely loses it, and oh man, it's so funny. But it's like, it just stuck with me, because in an era where we like get more button-up AAA releases, we want a little bit more polish. It's like, I'm glad that this game is such a B movie, in a way that I have another game in my list that, and that's gonna be in the top 10, that also embraces its B campy cheesiness, that makes me realize, like I like that kind of cheesiness in my games, instead of just like the high prestige games that we love, obviously, but that game just like embraced the camp. and I'm just glad it was worth the experience, even if it wasn't the. There were some parts that were a little rough, some levels that were a little longer than needed. Yeah, the chapter that we stopped on before, like we stopped before this chapter. That one was what when I started playing, I was like, man, this chapter's long. It's like repetitive, but then it just gets so much better with the boss fights, the story reveals. So yeah, really good game. I enjoyed it a lot. So, and I expected it was gonna be a game so bad where you just had to play, but the fact that it turned out good also. In a sea of very mid games that also came out in 2022, I think that was the best mid game.
It was more memorable than I really thought it would ever be.
Yeah,
and that's like the highest praise I think I can give it.
absolutely. So, and
so you have one more, right?
Yeah, I have one more. At the same game that came out the same day as Midnight Suns. The Callisto Protocol is my honorable mention.
Honorable mention, okay.
Yeah, so that's a game that I thought it was gonna be in the top 10 because I had to like play it against like what the reviews were saying, because this game got reviewed really harshly, more than I was expecting going in.
Yeah.
And in comparison to how harsh those reviews were, I enjoyed a lot of what it was, especially realizing, figuring out how to properly do the dodge mechanic, which a lot of people, when I read reviews, it seemed like they didn't quite get it. With the whole like, you can just hold it, you don't have to time it, and have to do left and right. If you're just trying to, because I was trying to just dodge one way, you're just gonna get killed there. Why it snucks in my honorable mention is that I wanted Callisto Protocol to have the impact I remember from the first Dead Space, and it just didn't. And I feel like it's a facsimile of trying to do it, and that to me is a little sad, because it was like, this is the guy that created Dead Space. This is like his new thing, and he did Callisto Protocol because EA wasn't doing anything with Dead Space. He basically did the Thanos, put in the gauntlet. No, I'll do it myself. Of hearing people, we want Dead Space back. Why is Dead Space dead? And he did a game that was solid, but didn't quite hit the highest of his original work. But it has potential. It definitely like left some breadcrumbs near the end that I'm like, okay, I can see. I want to see where the story goes from here, because there was barely any story in this one. And when you reframe it as an action horror game, like its melee focus comes into focus. But I tried Dead Space 1 again around that time before I left for my trip on backwards compatibility on Xbox One. Dead Space 1 is so much better. That's when I knew. I was like, yeah, it's like Callisto Protocol is not as bad as the reviews said it was. And in fact, like, I think that's a cautionary tale that if you give reviewers like 1 or 2 days before the release to like try to plow through a review to hit embargo right on release date, I think you can see the quality in those reviews there. And people should realize, yeah, if you want your game to be in the proper conditions so it can be properly consumed by people who are going to be reviewing it, don't give it a day or two, even if it's a short game, because me taking a little bit more time with it, I enjoyed it way more than all the disappointment that I was like that was being thrown at it. But yeah, it's an honorable mention for me.
All right. Well, I had a lot of trouble with putting Callisto Protocol anywhere, and it was either going to be in the honorable mentions that I just didn't have the ability to mention, or I had to put it in the disappointment category. Yeah. So I
actually had it there for a little bit, but then I remember another one and I bumped it up a little bit. But it was going to be there in the disappointing category, in the way that it was a game that we're really excited about, that even if we played it and enjoyed it, it wasn't what we wanted it to be. That's kind of like how we are looking at that category.
And that's kind of where I was sitting with that. And so it's like in the disappointment with a big asterisk, just like you said, where it's like, okay, it was disappointing for various reasons, but it's still something that I greatly enjoyed. So just like you kind of encompassed it all in what you said, where it's wasn't what we were kind of told it was going to be. It was a very different kind of game. It played very differently and had some strange mechanics that maybe were a little too complex and unnecessarily so, rather than like, okay, I guess they did that so that people wouldn't just like hold a button and instantly dodge everything. But it was weirdly explained that if you didn't see it in that one spot of the dialogue on that first tutorial thing and clicked away from it, you would not understand how it worked. And even like at the start, I was like, okay, why is this a thing? Why do I have to duck and weave almost like Sifu to avoid this damage? But then once you get it down, you're almost untouchable, and it kind of takes the horror aspect out of it almost. and like the storyline was kind of uninspired for me,
Yeah.
and I was like, okay, this is kind of cool, but it's a
How,
little
and
weird.
how they solved it, they were like, this is a return to Dead Space survival horror. That's not survival horror, it's
No.
action horror.
Yeah.
What they did with Callisto Protocol.
Which is
So,
still valid and good. It's just it's different from what you tried to market this game as,
mhm.
very clearly so. So it was like because of that side of it, but it's almost like a meta aspect where it's like if you just went into Callisto Protocol as is and just like vibed with what it was going for, then maybe you'd feel a little differently. But it's because we were like paying attention to how the trailers are supposed to be and how you're theoretically supposed to play this game was very different from how you're supposed to. So that was like parts of that and all of that stuff. But just like I've said with some of these others, it's like if they make a sequel to it in that universe, I'm fully down because I think they're going to use everything they learned for this to make
Yeah.
a really good, solid story.
It reminds me of the first Evil Within, because that was Shinji Mikami
Yeah.
also doing pulling a Thanos of like, Capcom is not doing traditional Resident Evil like we did with Resident Evil 4. We're gonna do it ourselves. And with Evil Within, it got close, but not quite. This feels the same way, but it established a franchise that a sequel could be even better, because Evil Within 2 to me was better than the first one. Maybe Callisto Protocol 2 can finally fully realize those ambitions, because this is technically, yes, it's Glenn Schofield, the guy that made Death Space, but it's not the same team working on Death Space. It's like a different kind of team working on his game. So I want to give it a little, like a sequel, its chance, because many games have come together in a sequel. It's just that the original Death Space came together from moment one. So more games need to come to, like, I would hope more games can come together in moment one. So, and that's the end of honorable mentions, Paul. So want to take a quick break before we go to disappointing games?
Fine with me. Let's
All
do
right.
it.
And we're back from that little break. And now we're moving into the quote unquote most disappointing games of 2022. This one, I wanted to like put a more positive spin on it is that when I looked at the games that I'm going to list, yes, some of them reviewed really low in comparison. Others reviewed relatively well for me. Like, for all things considered, it's just that these are games that, with the exception of one, I had some sort of excitement towards, or I thought they were going to be much better than they actually were. So, and I had some enjoyment out of those, but so there were some that I'm like, oh man, I can see there's something good here, but I'm not feeling this. So I'm going to start us out with this one, Paul.
Go for it.
This one was in my top 10 most anticipated games, and I'm putting it here. Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga. So, on
Coming in with the
paper,
hot takes. Let's go.
yeah, on paper, this game is really impressive for what Traveler's Tales did with finally changing the Lego formula, making it like an open world, like packing it to the brim of content from like all 9 movies. It looks incredibly beautiful for a Lego game. Like, I was playing it recently, like my dad saw it, I was like, man, it's like, we've been playing Lego games for so long, it's like, these Legos are real shiny. And they did put some work, and I don't love it. This is a game that I have heard some episodes are duller than other ones. Like, I did the prequel to sequel trilogy, like round going from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
I think that's what I did as well.
And for example, like episode 1, a movie that, especially in previous Lego games, I remember there was like so much excitement about it. The way they present episode 1 is so dull. Like, you're just like running from point to point. Like, the story is like so abbreviated. What its missions is just like some big set pieces that you don't even play as a character. You're just in a ship or doing a bunch of stuff. And there's just something that I liked about old style Lego games that were like easy platformers to like collect a bunch of coins and destroy everything and collect the characters. Some of those elements are here, but now they have added a lot of dual open world like traversal around that. When you're playing it, you feel a little bored sometimes, and I didn't want to feel that for Lego, because I love all the Lego Star Wars games. I love the original one, the second one. I even played them again with the complete saga back on 360. I love the Clone Wars one they did from seasons 1 and 2, the Lego Star Wars 3. I love Lego Indiana Jones. I love Lego Batman. Yeah, that old school style of Lego was so cool. And I respect what they did with this, and I think there is a good game here, and this is one of like the best selling games also. And I just wasn't feeling it. So
I think this technically didn't fit in anywhere with me, but I'll at least say my 2 cents briefly. Where I think there's a couple of things stopping you in general and stopping most people. Because what you said was accurate. For whatever reason, whenever they weren't really passionate about a specific aspect of it, they'd kind of gloss over that part of the movie. Or there used to be content that they just cut down. I think the style where you're out in the overworld and you have to literally run from one point of the movie to the next to actually start the mission really hurts it.
Yeah,
as
it hurts the
opposed
pacing.
to yeah, just like, hey, do you want to just go through the missions? Just like have an option to just flip through them and start them and go, instead of, hey, you did this one tiny little thing. Now this whole section of the game is run from this part of the map to the other and hit a button. And that's just not really. I don't think that was a good idea for them. But
yeah, it just hurt the pacing. But then there's some good. That's the thing.
Yeah.
The parts that are fun are really fun. They made episode
really
2 fun. That's what's so funny. Like, for example, the chase against Sam Wessel at the beginning of episode 2, that was like very exciting. I was like, oh, interesting. So you made the boring Star Wars movie a fun one, and then you made a relatively fun one like episode 1. Boring.
I don't really know what was going on with that, but because the quality assurance for like making sure all of them were vaguely around the same time ability or quality level is super off. But at the same time, I can almost see it like, if there's a rising action from the first of the trilogy into the next. The original trilogy is the only example that I feel like it just kind of hits at every point, because they clearly put a lot of work into those. And then the same thing with the Force Awakens was like, okay, Last Jedi, they just like ignored the entire movie. And I didn't even touch the Rise of Skywalker personally, but it's like, I like the idea that they kind of set up with that, but I don't know, it didn't execute. But then at the same time, I had to sit back at the end and say, well, this is a kid's game. Is it because I'm now a fully grown adult looking back on it? Because granted, like, I can go back to the PS2 Lego Star Wars game and it's slapped from start to finish, but also...
And there's nostalgia, because you have nostalgia having played those earlier.
Yes. And I think that's really one of the things that affects me in the end for that. So then I'm like, okay, I need to sit back and say, okay, this is a kid's game. I need to remember that. And just kind of like remember how fun it was. And then when I get tired, just go on to a new game. So I think that's what ended up happening to me. And I mainlined it as much as I could. And then better games came out that I just moved on to. So it stayed out of my disappointments, but also was just like, okay.
And again, like, but again, keeping it a positive spin is like, this was a game that reviewed well, and I think it's really good. Like, for what it did, it just bored me in a way that I wasn't expecting it. So I want to keep playing it because I love Star Wars. That's my saying. Like, I don't like being with a Star Wars thing that I don't like. That to me like pains me. Like, coming to terms with the Obi-Wan show recently. Like, I just don't like I don't like feeling that way, especially because Star Wars is always such a franchise that's fraught with negativity, like sometimes unnecessarily so. And so that doesn't like compute with like my own experience with it. So like with my entire experience with the prequel trilogy, like growing and loving those movies and realizing how hated they were, and I was seeing that happen the other way with the sequels. But I thought I was gonna absolutely love this game, and I didn't. I like it enough, but I was disappointed I didn't like it more. So, Paul, hit me with your next one.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and hit you with probably my only real indie in the disappointment category as Little Nightmares 2.
Okay.
I don't really have a whole lot to say about it outside of playing the first game, which you played the first one at least, right?
A little bit, because it was like $5.
Yeah. The first game captured this really weirdly specific kind of horror for me that I could not get enough of, where it was like you are helpless, small caricature child in these horrifying world of like adult monsters almost, where it's like you could almost say the whole thing is just one big metaphor, or you could say it's like this literal horror world that this child is trying to survive through. Really solid idea of like you find your way onto this ship that is made to be, these monsters are like on a cruise that eat children and stuff, and you have to escape. And then from there, it's like they tried to build for Little Nightmares 2 as like tying in this prequel almost with this side character that becomes things that are spoilers, but they'd really tried to make some kind of, whoa, isn't that so crazy and depressing? All right, see you next time. And that was it, where I was kind of hoping for a little bit more of just like another cool
Hmm.
mysterious, creepy romp almost. The same way Limbo and Inside always captured.
Hmm.
I didn't feel like the second one got for me, but I know also a lot of people kind of enjoyed it, so that's just my perspective.
But it's
But
your
anyway,
exactly. This is
yeah,
your disappointment, so,
right.
or
So like
relative disappointment.
that was really it for me. So I'll go ahead and pass it back to you. What's your next disappointment?
Saints Row.
Yeah,
So a big caveat with this one.
yeah,
When we played it back in August 23rd, I remember enjoying this. Like I remember, it's like I'm having a good time with this. The thing is that I had to like remember the circumstances with this. We came from a 4-month famish of not
yeah.
buying literally anything, so we were just starved for anything, and we played it. And this game was reviewed like brutally, like
Very brutal.
actually brutal. And we saw videos, deservedly so. The review bills were broken. The legendary skill up video of him doing the ending of that at the ending of the game and it breaking on him like with a T pose, like that game was broken AF for a lot of reviewers. Uh, Mine was relatively glitch free. The thing is that once I beat it, it's a game that never lingered with me. It just kind of passed me by, like a long night after a bad taco, and I feel like I started understanding the disappointment towards this game when I played Saints Row the Third, the remastered. When I played the remaster, I'm like, holy crap! The other game has like no personality. The other game's like so bland. The remaster of Saints Row the Third is so damn good that it put in highlight how like weaker this one is. So in the episodes that you can go back, it's like we enjoyed it at the time, but again, it's like in the context of a famish, like now looking back at it, it's like this game was like just something that we needed something to eat, so we're gonna eat whatever, and that's what was there. But it hasn't lingered in the mind. I know that they patched 300 bug fixes recently, and I'm like, oof. So
That's it needed a lot of fixes, honestly.
yeah,
But yeah, do you have anything else that you wanted to say about it?
yeah. It's just that it's just something that passed me by, but it's something that when I look back on it, I'm like, yeah, it's like I wanted a GTA style game again because GTA has just like being in GTA Online like purgatory forever. I wanted like a single player open world crime game, and this I wanted to scratch the itch with this one, but it was like it's okay. It wasn't like I felt it because I remember how big Saints Row the Third was, and returning to it, it's like no, Saints Row the Third was a moment. It was so good, and getting to like see that I need a hero ending
Yes,
of that thing is so damn good. It's
yes.
nothing in
It
the same in this one.
absolutely right, and I think that this was also on my disappointments list. So I'll just jump right into my next one
Mm-hmm.
because as somebody who very much adored the Saints Row series, kind of finding his way through three on accident, going back to play two, really not understanding what was going on with four, and then playing this was like I see where they tried to pull from the threads of two and three,
Mm-hmm.
especially to get this like back to the roots,
Back to
not all the weird
basics.
stuff,
Mm-hmm.
new characters.
No
I was
dildo
like, all
swords.
right, yeah, no dildo swords, but still like really wacky and kind of silly. Um, and then just really not landing it for any of like the characters nearly as much. The mechanics were kind of okay, but held
They were
together.
fun at times, and then they were like very glitchy. They were like
Yeah,
the bullet like detection was like there was like delay even if it wasn't even a online game.
yeah.
Sorry.
And then finally capping off with all the glitches, like you said, where there were moments where it just things would start freaking out. It was funny, but the pedestrians and the other NPC cars driving, where they
Mm-hmm.
like would just panic and start driving off for bridges and things, but also leading to really frustrating moments when you're trying to do one of like the nuclear truck thing where you cannot hit anything with your barrels,
Mm-hmm.
and then if one car kind of goes out of the way and bumps into another, every car goes freaky and starts driving into you and everything, and then
Mm-hmm.
you get your whole mission ruined. Was just really frustrating sometimes. Or you'd clip on like an invisible wall somewhere on the road, and other random issues that we talked about in the past on our podcast. So it soured it in the end.
Mm-hmm.
But there were parts of it that I still genuinely really enjoyed.
Exactly.
Besides that one side mission that still was failing
Yeah, you
at
were
the
like
end of it for
breaking.
me, it would just crash my game every time I try it, and that was just it hurt. But then I was glad that we could almost have the palate cleanser to go back to the Saints Row 3 remastered and go, especially for you having actually just played through it for the first time, being like, that's how it goes. That was how it was. That's why people loved the series. And then you understanding it so much.
And the remaster, great quality. There's such a great quality of that remaster. I'm like, this looks even better than the new game. What the hell happened? So
exactly. So that's really all I would say about Saints Row. It was like, it was fun, but at the same time, the only reason I think we liked it so much at the time was, like you said, there was nothing else to play.
And we had our arrangement, because remember, a lot of this could have been even more disappointing if we had paid full price for it. So that's something that I really needed to think about. Like, because it's easy to like forget that our special arrangement is not giving us the same experience as others, like monetarily wise. So
absolutely. So what's next for you?
Metal Hellsinger.
Ah.
Yeah, so this is one that when I first looked at it in one of Jeff Keighley's shows, like, I like Doom. I like the kinetic of a Doom style shooter. And I feel like this game sort of gets close to nailing that, especially with this mechanic of like you have to pull the trigger with the music, like the music cues, to be able to like get maximum like bullet spread to hit an enemy. And then whenever that game like you get into that flow, especially if you're playing on headphones, it's very hard to like not shoot and be like this, like moving your head and like vibing to it. It's a game that it's so fun at the beginning, and then it just gets so frustratingly, brutally, unfairly hard near the end, with endless monster closets, no checkpoints in the levels. And if you like, and you can only pick weapons at the beginning of each level. And if you like pick a bad combination that seemed like the right idea at the beginning, and having to play an entire level to reach a boss that you realize your weapons were not proper to the layout that you were gonna fight them in, and then having to die because you have lives, and then you have to like restart the whole level. It was like so demoralizing that it left a bad taste in my mouth after having so much fun with it. Because I tell you, it's like there is a nice feeling like vibing to that metal song, especially if you're an edgy kid like Paul used to be here back in the day. It's like there's just something cool about those rock songs, and that coolness just didn't translate for the entire game. So when I look back to it, I was like, man, I had so much fun at the beginning, but it really soured me with those like final levels. So
I didn't have it anywhere for me because I didn't really play it, because I immediately recognized it for what it was going to end up being. Is that the concept of doing the things on the rhythm was going to become more of a detriment than a plus, because in the end you can kind of do that for any game if you want to, because that's exactly what I used to do when I was an edgy kid. I would listen to metal and I would play Dragon Ball Z games, and I would do the punches to the timing of it all. So I realized, I was like, this sounds like a cool idea that I think is going to end up really being a pain in the butt, because every rhythm game always has that moment where it stops being, hey, I'm playing to the sound of this cool music, and it's, oh my gosh, I got to get this one thing right now, and that always like gave me anxiety. So I think I stayed far away from Metal Hellsinger in the end, even though it sounded like something right up my alley. And,
you can try it. It's on Game Pass. That's how I tried it.
But I also have a lot of other things I'd rather play on Game Pass personally. So in the end,
it's an embarrassment of riches, I tell you.
Yeah, it really is. Because I was just thinking about wanting to go back to Final Fantasy 13 once I'm done with all these really huge RPGs I'm playing right now.
Yeah, good thing that it's not on Game Pass. That's on the thing that I shared with you.
I know, right? So anyway, that was
next one, Paul.
One little thing for me. I'm gonna go into my next disappointment, which was Dying Light 2.
Okay, yeah, I didn't put it anywhere, but yeah.
Yeah, for me personally, because I remember when I first got Dying Light 1, and it was like, I picked it up on a whim at GameStop, and it was like, this is fantastic, this is so cool, like the story's whatever, but like it's really fun to play. And the second game, like, I remember messaging y'all about it, where I was like, I feel like frustrated that I'm not getting into this. Like, it's such a perfect tee up concept, and like to add details like a weird faction system that locks very specific weapons behind it is like, that was one thing that really turned me off on the whole game, where it's like, okay, so you gotta not just play the game for the fun of it, you have to deal with these like two very specific factions. If you deal with one, you lose the abilities of the other, and both of them have very different very equally important weaponry and things that you need, and it's like I don't want to deal with all that.
That in concept is cool because it's like an RPG. Sometimes you have to make hard choices.
Yeah, and I get it, but also like the way it was laid out for me just felt kind of wrong, especially when you have an entire mode with the crossbow being only tied to one of the factions, and it's like seems to be a very, very overpowered weapon. So it's like the decision's almost made for you because of the weapon, not the, hey, I want to see how this like role play storyline goes with these two factions. And then also like the idea that the items on the map would not respawn periodically, but it wouldn't tell you when they did. So you'd go spend your way working through this one little zone only to find out that it hasn't respawned yet and you forgot where that was. So there's like a lot of frustrating parts of it that for whatever reason affected me more than most people, but in the end I was just sitting there like, I'm not enjoying myself, and that's not a good thing. I'm gonna go play something else. So
probably didn't help that we played through Dying Light 1 co-op with you
right
and Zach,
before, and we had so much fun with it. Yeah, but yeah, that was really it for me. It just didn't do it for me, and I hope that
that's in my that's in that like non-list we did of like games I wish I played more of, because I waited until that game was fully patched because it launched like busted in a way.
Yep,
and we got it.
That was all busted up.
Yeah, and we got it at a discount. I was like, yeah, we can guard this at a discount, probably do co-op. And then it wasn't that weird Malay spirit that I was just playing Origins. Remember? I was like, I went back to like playing a bunch of old games.
I can't stop playing it. I was like, stop playing it. Go play the things we're buying.
I know.
And then you just didn't want to. And then I was like, well, I'm going to do the same thing. And then I went back and played all these other games.
So my next one, Paul, I think this one's also here in this list for you.
Probably.
Gotham Knights.
Yep.
So we can talk about it now. It's like, I'm a big Arkham fan. Arkham Asylum, City, and even Knight, even Origins. It's like those are the first original like really great superhero games that paved the way. They walked for something like Marvel's Spider-Man to run, and Gotham Knights, like coming from the Arkham Origins team. A game that I think gets maligned because there's so many cool moments in Arkham Origins that I would even argue are even cooler than even the main Arkham trilogy proper.
Deathstroke fight.
Yeah, it's amazing still to this day. And I felt like that WM Montreal had something in them that they needed to prove with like a game outside the Arkham Shadow. And what we got Gotham Knights, it's a game of two halves. It's like, I feel the story they told here and the way that they wrote it, in that be so meticulous with like all the different 4 characters that if you play it with one, it feels like you're playing a game tailor-made for that character. I feel that's worth some merit. It has some really great character moments. I even told you in our chat that following the Jason Todd thread, like when you get like the special cutscenes, and that last one where he embraces Alfred after being like such close stuff, after like still dealing with the Lazarus Pit remnants of like being revived of that thing. I feel like he's never whole. Yeah, it's like I feel like he came out as like, man, like this big brute of this team is like the heart and soul of this team, and it has such great character moments and story that I just hate that the game around it sucks. Like this game's clearly was gonna be a live service, that then they jank out a lot of live service stuff after they probably saw that Avengers crash and burn in the live service elements, but it still remains like the million currencies you have to do, like having to like unlock your traversal mechanic, doing like 10 challenges, like all the amount of grind you have to do in the thing, like the combat never feeling as satisfying as the Arkham combat, especially not being able to have like a counter attack, but having to try to do like the dodge mechanic, and how the level scaling made exploring the world sometimes a chore compared to the missions that sometimes you needed to like explore to like be able to advance for the next quest. And the level scaling was like all wrong, that then you were like trying to beat thugs that were so easy earlier, and the level scaling would put it in a way that made it so hard later on that just made it less enjoyable. And while being on the main missions, like this is relatively enjoyable, but maybe a little too easy. I was like killing enemies with one hit sometimes. It was like, I don't know what happened with the game design of that thing, but it just like brought down a package that from a story perspective I really liked. And to me, some further thinking, it took 9 years. 9 years for them to make that game. And that's what we got. So it's sad because it's like I feel like it's solid, like Gotham Knights, like from a critical standpoint, solid the Batman games like reputation as like as pristine quality, because even Arkham Origins was relatively well received. It wasn't as well received as the Rocksteady trilogy, but it's like it's a game I wanted to love more. In fact, like, I played it a lot. I killed myself into really like it, but once I removed myself, being like and thinking, should I do it again? I'm thinking, nah, the game kind of sucks. Like the actual game part. The story was good though, but that's why it's here.
I think I agree with you for the most part, so I won't really retread it all. But I think my best visual representation of my thoughts on it are when you are promised a road trip and they tell you all these cool stops that it's going to make, and after like 3 stops it goes a different route, where it's like, okay, I might still have fun, I might hit some of the same things that I really wanted out of this, but it's also, most of it is something I really didn't want to deal with, and I'm more like waiting till the good part happens again. Just like you said, where it's like the storyline, if you played one after the other, it's really solid.
Yeah.
The characters are really fleshed out. I love the idea behind them. Each one plays very differently, but then it's like all of the stuff that it is merged together with is just muddy and nasty and padding for padding's sake, and therefore it was also in my disappointments list. But
and the worst part is you couldn't even do story after story. It's like every story beat you had to grind out the open world to get to the next story beat. It's like,
I should have clarified, if you were allowed to do each of the story missions one after the other, it would be better. But it's like you had to be, hey, go do stop 5 crimes from this faction and
find this one that's over here that may be there. If not, you have to like reset at the belfry and go back in to see if they're probably there. It's like there was just a lot of busy work that was not the game's strength. That if it was a game that was just like allowed you to mainline it, it would have been so much stronger. Because just like Arkham Origins, the story they told here is really good. I got choked up at times.
Yeah, it was powerful.
The Batman fight at the beginning was awesome. The Batman Arkham, like
that was
Russell
so
Gould.
Cool to watch. Batman like actually being clever in his fights. And
in his last stand.
Every piece of his like tech, losing that piece of tech and just figuring something out on the fly, using every part of the Batcave as his offense and defense at times. That was great. And then, of course, non-spoilers, the last portion of the game, just really nailing that emotional side of things. And then for whoever you picked, finding a very specific to them reason why they want to take on the mantle almost and move forward is like, that's perfect.
You got Batgirl, I got Nightwing, and I love how the story ended. And again, it's like, it makes it more disappointing because you see the potential. Yes. I think this is the game that encapsulates more like what a most disappointing list would look like, even if we're trying to be more positive, like trying to put a more positive spin on things. It's just that I was really excited about Gotham Knights. I just wanted to be back in that world. In fact, I was so excited to be back in that world that I forced myself to 40 hours of that game because I just wanted to be in that world.
Yeah.
But then I finally removed myself from it. I'm like, it's like, no bueno. It could have been so much better. It needed to be so much better. Now it's like, it feels like DC once again ceded the way to Marvel now. Because they're the ones that started with the good games before Marvel, and now Marvel got Spider-Man, so.
And now with Midnight Suns being out there as well, being like at least decent, if not good, for whoever plays it, is DC needs to step the game up again.
Yeah, it's like all eyes now on Suicide Squad. So.
And who knows what that's going to be like.
Exactly. And
so yeah,
you
that's
already
it for our disappointments, isn't it?
I have one more because you had because
I listed one of mine already. So
yeah,
go ahead.
So I think you'll be shocked at this one, but there is a reason why I'm putting it here.
All right, let's hear it.
I'm putting one of the Game of the Year nominees here. A Plague Tale Requiem.
All right, you know what? I'm not shocked based on what you've been talking about, but please
so
me further.
This was the year after you had been like recommending it to me many times as a game that I would really dig.
Yeah.
I played Plague Tale Innocence.
Yep.
I absolutely adored my time with Innocence up until the last chapter.
Right.
The second to last chapter where you have to like that section where the dude has to push the card. I hate it, but before that I was like, man, they like nailed the Last of Us vibe in like this Inquisition time. This is incredibly beautiful for a team of like 50 people. Man, I really like Amici and Hugo. And I can imagine like with a proper budget, they could take this to even greater heights. And playing Requiem, I'm like, probably the biggest thing with Requiem with me was that I didn't want to play it. I played it for a little bit, and I would it would be like Lego Star Wars for me. I know that there's something really good here. It looks incredibly beautiful. Now the new swarms of rats is insane. Like how they like increase that. Now the new gameplay additions, but to me there wasn't the drive I had with Innocence to like keep playing it. And I really wanted it because I remember after I finished Innocence, I was like, Requiem has shot up now as like one of my most anticipated games for the rest of this year. I can't believe how good Innocence was. Like now that this is a full price product, I bet it's gonna be better. And in parts it was better, but I just didn't want to play it. It was like it's still sitting in my cross media bar there. I see it and I'm like, do I really want to play it? And I know it's longer also, so I'm like, it didn't grab me early on, and that makes me sad. I wanted it to, so that's why it's the most disappointing there.
This one didn't actually make it on any list for me personally. I think I still ended up being further than you. Yeah, because you never actually.
I only played like 4 chapters of it.
I still think, and that's probably a failure on the devs' part, that it really doesn't feel like it pops off. Besides, like the action-packed intro, until like after where you kind of stopped, I think, at least for what it felt like for me. And I don't know, it felt like they were trying to add a lot of details, take a lot of things away, or like the town you'd walk through at first with just such a slow level, being like, look at the technical improvements, look at how wide open this kind of like space is. You can talk to all these NPCs and see all of this and see how the world is. We're expanding
They put
the world.
so much effort into all the details. It's like there's so much good in this.
And I'm like, I understand it, but I want to like, let's get moving here. We did a lot of big setup on that. We got a lot of big revelations. Let's move on to those like plot lines that we set up. That we said we set up, and it just felt like it wasn't really kicking off as much. And like new characters that were being introduced, I was like, all right, I don't really care about you as much. Let's get back to the core group. And it felt like we took a step back with Amicia's mother, like trying to lead again. And I was like, all right, we're past this, Mom. Get off my back. I know what to do. Kind of an attitude as like a player, like let me go do things. So yeah, it wasn't grabbing me the same way as you. I think I still liked it more than you did in the end.
Yeah,
but
because
also,
you played more than I did.
I've hit this point where I was like, Plague Tale specifically is like targeted misery, similarly to how Last of Us was, and I really don't need that right now.
Yeah.
And I think that was the final nail in the coffin for me. I was like, I can't just sit here and watch this poor teenage girl and her small brother just having the worst time for 20 hours. I need to go like play something a little more fun, more exciting right now. And it's like nothing against them, it's just not the kind of game that I needed at that time, and still I don't feel like I need right now.
Exactly.
So one day I hope I can.
I love my mystery myself. It's just that it just didn't grab me, and I wanted it to grab me because Innocence grabbed me. I was like, in fact, I hated myself for waiting that long to play Innocence.
I remember
what I played didn't feel that different, and I'm like, I was expecting it to feel a little bit different, at least early on. This game got nominated for Game of the Year. A lot of people beat it. That they stand by it. I can imagine I can go back to it like with a different like frame of mind, and realize, no, this was actually really good. It's just, as of right now, when we're recording this, I'm disappointed that this isn't a game that when I would wake up and think, what do I want to play? I want to play this.
Yeah.
Ironically, I played Gotham Knights, this game that came out the same time as this one, more. But that was more because I love the setting of Gotham Knights, even though that game sucked. Yep. Like as a game,
even
this
though
is a much
like
better game.
Objectively, or I guess really subjectively, is a worse game. I had more fun with it. It's just, it's weird. Our brains are strange, and they're all different. Everybody.
Yes. So, back again, like I mentioned with this category, I'm not saying this is a bad game. In fact, there's a lot of good. This got nominated for a reason. For me personally, I'm personally disappointed I didn't like it more. So, with that, Paul, time for the Big 10.
Big 10.
So
let's do this. We've already knocked out a few of them in the process of talking through these things.
Exactly. So like I can start out. Like my number 10 was Stranger of Paradise, Final Fantasy Origin. Already talked about that. So what was your 10?
My number 10 was Horizon Forbidden West.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So to give everybody perspective briefly, I went through all of this. I put up my top 10, put all my honorable mentions, and right at the end of yesterday, I went, oh my gosh, I forgot to put Horizon Forbidden West even on this list. And then when I sat down and thought about why for me, then I was like, that's probably a pretty bad indicator. And then also, like, I want to at least put it somewhere. It was too good to be in the honorable mentions. But everything else on my list, I genuinely have moments where I, like, really loved it. And in the end, I feel like a lot of the reason I liked Forbidden West was because there was either nothing else during that time until Elden Ring came out. And then
literally a week after.
Back,
remember, Horizon came out a few days before.
And I remember, like, our podcast being like, we have the seal of approval on Horizon Forbidden West. They improved so much. It's a ton of fun. It's really great. And then thinking back on what I said, my cat got up off my lap and tail whipped me in my tongue. And I have like hair on my tongue now. Anyway, while I'm trying to talk. So anyway, when I finally went back to Horizon Forbidden West, it was like all I did was mainline it so I could know what happened. And while I enjoyed myself, I had no interest to go outside of that. And for like, that has to mean something for me with where I'm going to put it on my top 10. And I know it's different, but like, at least for me, it was just, it didn't grab me the way that I needed it. And I think the consensus for a lot of people was like, the mystery was so cool for the first one that once that was done and all that was left was the combat, which they improved on, and like the world, it wasn't as good for people as it was for the first game, they said. And so I was like, all right, I think I get it. So that's why it's at the bottom of my top 10, unfortunately, but it's there.
But that's the thing, like, being in the top 10 is still the best games of the year.
It is. So that's the crazy thing, especially with all the other stuff that we played this year. I know this is on your top 10, so go ahead and talk about it.
Yeah, it's absolutely in my top 10. Like, this is one of the few platinum trophies I got this year. This was my most anticipated game coming into this year, and just knowing that I was gonna get it, and it absolutely was the sequel I wanted out of it. It was like, it was an improvement across the board with the exception of story. Like, I feel like from moment to moment, the story has improved dialogue, has improved some character like moments and stuff, but from a main plot, it felt like when they did Horizon Zero Dawn, they wanted to do like a one and done, because he just closed out like the emotional arc of thing, that then when they started this one, they had to come out like with something new, even though they had teased that they wanted to do a sequel with Horizon Zero Dawn, like at the very end with Silence, the character played by Lance Reddick, the black guy that's also Zavala in Destiny. And I feel like it does, like Horizon Forbidden West did a great job at fleshing out this world, like in a more micro way. And some of the additions they did, like with some of the monsters that you fought, were like really cool. Some of like the mounts that you could like now like ride, like getting to, happens way too late in the game, but getting to get the flying mount is so cool. Getting to see that, getting to fly through that entire world.
That by itself, I think, was one of the reasons it made it for me.
Yes, and I will still say, like, I don't think there's a prettier game that came out this year, like from a technical, like just in sheer quality, especially like right now.
Sitting there looking at the world. Kind of look.
Especially right now. I went back to it recently just to like test it in the TV where I'm currently at. They improved the performance mode now, because the performance mode had a weird shimmering earlier on, and now it's like so stable, and it's like, I can't believe a game can look this pretty and run this smooth now. So I think from like a PS5 perspective, from like from a game that's like pushing it like graphically, it's like it's right up there. And at least in the Ubisoft style open world game, I still think that they do Ubisoft open world better than Ubisoft does it, in a way that it compelled me to like 100% it and get a platinum trophy, compared to something like Assassin's Creed Valhalla that still grabbed me by the balls, and I'm still playing in the DLC. But that's just a me problem. But highly enjoyable game, one of my favorite games of this year. But I understand, like, also people have to know Paul hates women, so that has to.
Oh my goodness.
I'm just kidding.
Gotta drag that into the next year.
But that's always
that is a reference, not an actual statement of fact, everybody.
But yeah, it's just yeah, but you also took you how many years to finish Zero Dawn also? So making it it at least making it to your top 10 at least is something that it did something to want to put it there, because I love Horizon more than you do originally, so this was going to be right up my alley. But there were a few other games that were a little better, but this is still, it was still up there. I'm concerned about how Sony's going to drive Horizon into the ground now with with all the sprites that we've heard about. But at least when it comes to Forbidden West, I feel it was criminally underrated based on when it came out. Had this been a 2021 game, I said it before and I stand by it, this would have been 2021 Game of the Year compared to what came out that year.
Yeah.
Sucks that it had to come out this year. So, Paul, what's your number 9?
My number 9 is, once again, probably lower than you're expecting, is Destiny 2: The Witch Queen.
Paul, that's my number 9.
Oh my goodness,
funny.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, you're probably going to agree with me on what I'm going to say then, is that despite the very good campaign that I will give all the praise in the world for how cool it was, how awesome the aesthetic was, and everything related to that, the only reason I continued to play Destiny 2 and enjoyed it is because of the people that we connected with this year.
Okay.
And zero connection to the game itself, I believe. Go ahead.
So I would say this is my number 9 because of the campaign. The campaign was so good, and it also it rethought the concept of difficulty for Destiny and the concept of rewards for Destiny, that it made the rest of the game feel so rote. Right now, Destiny's in this weird position where it's one step forward, 2 steps back, and that they're finally trying things into trying to evolve the game, but they're still tethered to the old style of Destiny 2 from 2017 that's still carrying through. The old bones of the old version of that game are still kind of holding it back. That the Witch Queen campaign, it's a great proof of concept of how great Bungie is at crafting shooter campaigns, that especially because they finally were they were putting all their effort into endgame stuff, because they were let's put the effort into things that people are going to be coming back over and over and over again. But this was the year where they were nah, screw that, we're gonna put the same effort to that, but let's put an initial first great effort for a story campaign that we believe can stand together against campaigns from other shooters. And I would say they succeeded. They said that they wanted to do a campaign that could be as fun as something like Titanfall 2 or even Doom. And in design, I would say they succeeded. Playing that thing on Legendary completely changes the way that you approach Destiny, and also giving you hard difficulty with throwing champions and match game. So as you know, Destiny has this problem that it funnels you to be no, to be able to do this high level difficulty activity, you have to use the weapons that are going to have this champion mod, and that limits your build and arsenal loadout potential that the Legendary campaign didn't need. It's just you could do it and replay that campaign with different weapons, with different loadouts, different power permutations, because they tune it well to be able to do that. And I feel Lightfall has to do that again in its campaign that's coming out in 2 months, and do that for the rest of the game. This new season that we're currently playing at, they're slowly doing that. The new mission for the exotic, it's implementing the Witch Queen campaign Legendary difficulty. I'm thank you. I'm put that, because it's this is the way forward for Destiny. Year 5 of Destiny to me has been a whiff. It started real strong, but all the seasons we got this year have been. That's why I'm specifically pointing to Witch Queen. I'm not just putting Destiny 2 as a whole, because as a whole, I didn't enjoy Destiny this year, but the campaign was so enjoyable that I just hope that's where the game gets with Lightfall next year. But shout out to our clan. I enjoyed playing with our clan and doing those raids and getting those exotics and doing the dungeons. That's been fun, but the content itself for this year, I thought it was going to be better. But shout out to the Witch Queen campaign. That's why it's here as my number 9.
Yeah. Now, remind me, what did you list your 10 was?
Stranger of Paradise.
Yeah, that's right. Because we skipped right over that.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, because we have to write it in. Yeah, yeah, I forgot.
So, do you want to jump into your next, or
yes? No, I'm the next one.
Okay, cool.
I forgot that I was the first one, and then I said it to you, and it just so happened that we had Destiny 2 at number 9. Uh, Evil West is my number 8.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so Evil West, a late addition to this past year, and I lost you in the camera. So
The wrong button.
I would say Evil West is like probably some of the most pure fun I had in 2022. A game so unpretentious. It knew what it was. Just a badass cowboy simulator fighting vampires, like if it's Van Helsing with like some Tesla-induced weapons and a little bit of God of War-inspired combat and shooting. And when that game gets flowing, like whenever you're like grabbing people in with your Tesla like grappling hook, punching them in, throwing your shotgun, pulling out your shotgun from your face button, like blowing their heads off, or increase your grenade that then eventually becomes like a tornado of electricity. It's just
so glad that you told me about that because I wouldn't have noticed it at first.
Yeah.
And, oh.
Evil West is so fun. It's like it harkened back to old school Xbox 360 / PlayStation 3 weird ideas, taking inspiration from like the big games of that era. In this case, like something like Gears of War, and doing it really good. And now it becomes such a breath of fresh air because it's like we're in the era where everyone wants their next masterpiece. Everyone wants like the high quality like game of the year caliber contender, and I'm like, screw that. It's like gaming can have that, and also can have your summer blockbuster. Evil West was that summer blockbuster kind of game for me. Like same as like something like Stranger of Paradise. It's like a game that objectively is not as great as those, but it doesn't. It's like it doesn't pretend to be anything more than it is. Just a fun, good time. And man, it was also my first review for Season Gaming this year.
Right,
so,
and that was a big milestone for you.
So yeah, so that helped me like push through that game, but I had a lot of fun with it. I gave it like an 8 out of 10 in their scale. I personally would have scored it even higher in my own personal scale, but at least for the scale it's like I had a sensational time with it. So yeah, Evil West my number 8.
So Evil West was my 7. So I'll briefly mention it. There's not much that I could say that's not either what you already said or what I've said in previous podcast episodes. Just that I had a ton of fun with it. Like you said, such robust combat, very like Doom style. You are hitting every button as the cooldowns land. Every different part of it just feeling like a cool badass cowboy, like you said, that's also Van Helsinging his way through all these crazy vampires and different monsters and stuff. It's just such a cool, fun concept, and really like it almost here's what I'm gonna say. It did like with Callisto Protocol, where it's trying to do that weird action horror, but way more on the action and way more fun, as opposed to Callisto Protocol kind of holding itself back with that.
The thing is that Evil West never pretended to be anything other than what it was.
Exactly.
So it was like it was gonna be horror-ish elements because you're fighting vampires, but it was just gonna be a fun romp. It was exactly as promoted. It was exactly as it was, and they nailed it. Like, it can get really hard sometimes, but
absolutely, and that's one thing that I'm like, did it really need to jump? So like we just talked about very abrupt jumps in difficulty with Tunetank, where it's like between one mission to the next, like at, I think you said chapter 8 or something.
Yeah,
it just goes
halfway
like,
through.
Okay, we're gonna throw mini bosses as the regular enemies all of a sudden, have fun, go wild, but also this is gonna suck. So I would have hoped for maybe a little bit more gradual on that, but at the same time I had a ton of fun and it was great. So I kind of hope that they do a sequel to that too, or just people learn from it. So yeah,
exactly.
My actual 8 was Sifu, which we already talked about.
All right. So we can
even keep moving on to that.
Yeah, it's like we already talked about it, so we don't need to like. That's why I always tell you, just tell me like if you hear it before, just say your piece, so we don't have to hear it again.
Right.
And my number 7 is Sonic Frontiers.
Hey, okay.
Sonic Frontiers is, bar none, the biggest surprise I had with a game this year. This is a game I expected to hate. This was a game I expected to use as ammo to make fun of our friend PJ, because making fun of the Sonic fan base that would go as far as cutting their own veins just because people are teasing it over them winning the whatchamacallit, like the player choice game of the year. Remember the
player choice awards losing to Genshin Impact.
Like in the Game Awards,
causing that chaos.
Yes, but the thing is that they got a legit win this year. Here's the thing: Sonic Frontiers compared to like actual quality games is not that great, but they finally, because visually it has a great art style, but it has atrocious pop in. It like sometimes looks really bland. Like why are this like weird geometry popping right in front of you that has like no rhyme or reason sometimes with the way the world is designed. But this is the first time in 20 years Sega finally, it took them 20 years, but Sega finally found a way for Sonic to control so damn well at 3D that this was like one of the most fun like traversal mechanics I played in an open world this year. This would be a game that I would just pop in and just run around with like super speed and chaining like chaining the moves, the Sonic's moves between like the rails and the super speed in a way that I didn't do with a game like since Tony Hawk. And the levels that you play here that were like more classic, they're the best design Sonic has had. That now I'm like, Sega finally has the proper skeleton with the sturdy bones for Sonic to be an actually legit successful 3D platformer from here on out, as long as finally they add proper meat to these bones. But those like bones were so good that it was one of my favorite things I played this year. That's why it's at my number 7. And the surprise factor of it all. You already said Evil West is your 7.
Yep, and that is already my 7. So you go ahead with your 6 then, and I'm going to tell you another one that's probably already been talked about as well.
Read it, Paul. My number 6.
Kirby and the Forgotten Land for your number 6.
This was a shocking development for me because this was a game that came out earlier this year, but I didn't even buy it because I had a weird relationship with Nintendo this year. I think it got even saltier after we got bamboozled with the Wind Waker Twilight Princess news from late in September, that I just didn't want to like do anything with them. But I did a podcast appearance with this guy named Sebastian. That my episode is live already. I should be able to link it here. He's gonna actually join us for our most anticipated talk for next week. He actually asked me, "You didn't play Kirby?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "Dude, you have to play Kirby." It's like, first, if you have to play a Nintendo game for this year, definitely play Kirby. I was like, "Okay, I'll play it in my travel," because I played most of my Switch, more than my console. I bought it, and I'm a sucker for level-based platformers with fun action and cute visuals and amazing soundtrack, and that's Kirby in the Forgotten Land. Kirby is like, you don't like Mystery, Paul, play Kirby in the Forgotten Land. This is like Kirby in the Forgotten Land is gonna plaster your face with like with a huge smile with how cute it is, just how fun it is, like how inventive it can sometimes be with the way like Kirby can transform. It's up with the things that or whatever Kirby is. I don't know.
I don't think anybody still knows at this point.
Yeah, it's like, I think he's just non-binary. Who cares?
Yeah, he's whatever he is.
Yeah, but it's like and it's a game so simple. It's like it harkens back to old school game design. Like think about it, even like level design like Super Mario 3D World, and even like something like Crash Bandicoot. Just linear levels that have like some secrets if you know, like if you poke around, and it's like just a bundle of joy. This Kirby in the Forgotten Land. It's like, from like when it comes to like more family friendly games, it doesn't get better than Kirby. That's why it's my number 6.
Well, mine is Midnight Suns. Like breaking into the middle of the road for my top 10, and I already talked about it. Yeah. It's just I didn't even want it to be on my top 10, but
yeah, this is one of the games that you haven't beaten, that you're seeking in. But it's not. Yeah.
So far, the only one that I did not beat. However, as you see, all of these are 2022 games.
Yeah, I'm so proud of it.
So yeah, that's all I was going to say with that. What's your 5?
The Last of Us Part 1.
Yeah. All right.
So I would say this, like Last of Us Part 1 deserves some credit. Like the whole talk about it is it a necessary remake, the price, and all of that, all valid points.
Yeah.
The work Naughty Dog did for Last of Us Part 1, the same amount of quality they put for Last of Us Part 2 in their best story, now in the best package. It's like getting to replay this game now, because that's the thing, I replayed it twice this year. I played Remastered first, and then I played this year, and I felt the improvements. It's like, you don't realize how good Last of Us Part 1 is until you actually play it. And you realize it's like, ooh, the stiffness that it's in Remastered, gone now. Even though this game doesn't have crawling, doesn't have like the dodging mechanics, it doesn't need it, because the way this game was designed didn't require it. And now it's like the game, like character movement makes things like gunplay feel so much better. The accessibility options they added from part 2, retroactively added to this one, just made platinuming it such a joy again. And the level of quality in visuals is like Naughty Dog just like doesn't half-ass it. It's like the quality of the facial animations, the character models, the world, everything that Naughty Dog does is like that they really go all the way in. And I will say that Last of Us Part 2, like Seattle is more bland looking compared to like Part 1's more like cross country spread. And the beauty of part 1 with the visuals of 2 added to it now just makes for a really great package that now that the TV show is debuting this weekend, if people want to play it, this is the version they have to play. Like, I can't in good conscience say play remastered. Even if it's cheaper, it's just like part 1 is that much better. And I feel like as someone that considers Last of Us the first one in my top 5 favorite games of all time, getting this in was basically the 4K Blu-ray version of it. Like its most pristine quality. I feel it was worth it for me. So it was my 5th favorite thing that I played this year.
All right. As you'll notice, Last of Us Part 1 is not going to be on anything for me. It was good, and for me, I just don't think it was good enough to include outside of just, at the same time, it improved everything, but also I think part of me kind of broke with The Last of Us last year, as we've already talked about. So my number 5 is Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII.
Tell me about it.
And I see yours already showing up. So anyway, there's a part of me that feels like it could have been in number 4 depending on the day for me, and it'll explain it in a little bit later. But
I'll say this, Paul.
Yeah,
the price of freedom is steep.
It is very steep.
Let me just jump in, Paul.
Go ahead.
This game is freaking fantastic,
isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's like it's stuck with me like this entire past month. Yes. It's ending like it's just like Zach's exuberance, like his character, like the importance of like his sacrifice to the Final Fantasy like franchise, and seeing his origins and seeing how like Shinra, the Shinra Corporation, kind of like ultimately betrayed him for the sake of just experiments, and the importance of his sacrifice to Cloud's character, beginning to witness it firsthand in one of the best remasters I've ever seen, and it's just like because here's the thing, like this could have been in. They could have go the remake route, like Final Fantasy VII Remake, and change the story and all that. But this was like you having a favorite movie that never left the Betamax, finally remastered in 4K, and also like they went hard with like the visual overhaul of this thing.
Yes.
That is like something even better than some of the really cool CG cutscenes, like the fight between Angel and Sephiroth from like third chapter and Genesis, and just like the ending just sticks with you. It's like that's the thing. Like everyone can tell you're gonna cry with Final Fantasy with the end of this game, even if you know it's coming. The way it's done is like it's manipulative, but holy crap, it hits. Like it absolutely hits. It's like it enriches Final Fantasy VII like in its entirety, and I'm just glad that now that we know that remake is like toying around with some things to like make this even something more important. I'm glad that Crisis Core now it's widely available. It's not just a game that you play with a UMD, but that Square Enix like had the audacity to like restrain themselves and make it just presented as is while improving on the things they needed to improve. Yes. It's like I debated putting this even higher. I didn't want to put it like recency bias as like trying to put it even higher, but screw it. It's like it's one of the best things that I played this year. That's why it was my number 4. Is your number 5?
Honestly, like the more we talk about it, the more I'm like, it should probably be 4 for me. Honestly,
flipping now.
I'm flipping it. Flipping it because the other one was Modern Warfare 2. And F that game compared to Crisis Core because the price of freedom is steep, man.
Yeah,
and that crap hits you and sticks with you. Because my gosh. Just like what you said, and it's very validating after all of this time to be talking about Crisis Core as that weird, obscure PSP game that Paul really likes, and then for you to hit the exact feelings that I've been feeling on that, as like all of these years later, as a fully grown adult, not just an edgy teenager,
Mm-hmm.
was very nice to hear from me, because I'm like, I've been talking about this thing for so long and nobody ever knows what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, like the restraint to one recreate this whole game, even with the script and everything, just to give people exactly what we experienced back in
Mm-hmm.
2008 or whatever, of what this game was about, why it's so powerful, why everyone loves Zach, why it's so important for the rest of Final Fantasy VII, leading up to exactly the beginning segment of Final Fantasy VII. Also being the first time you saw that CG trailer as like up-resed, like
Mm-hmm.
modern thing, because people were obsessed with that, if you remember. They even remade it for that PS3 demo, and everyone lost their minds because they thought they were going to be remaking Final Fantasy VII to look like that. That was like the first time you got to see that,
Mm-hmm.
and seeing where everybody was going on it. And I'll just gush about one specific thing, is that with like the WMD, whatever it's called, at the
Ah.
start, at the very end of the game, with the way Zack is finally like slowly dying,
Mm-hmm.
the last moment that he thinks about different people slowly going in a
Ah.
hierarchy of like further away friends, mentors, and being the last thing he thinks about being Aerith to give him a cure to keep him alive,
Mm-hmm.
merging gameplay and story to keep to let him survive long enough
Mm-hmm.
to keep fighting, was like, it just hits you in the chest and it doesn't stop. Oh, the final moments between Zack and Cloud, and like seeing exactly why the reveals in Final Fantasy VII are such a big deal for him, and why he was so jacked up with his memory, is just, it's such a perfect full circle for all of it.
So, did I become a hero?
Yeah, that
Mm-hmm.
just the it hurts, man.
Mm-hmm.
It hurts. But then it like, once again, anybody who plays this is now going to have this renewed um rebirth of interest
Mm-hmm.
in
Yeah.
the next game.
Final Fantasy VII Rebirth coming this winter.
Yeah. Sponsored by Sony anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, you see, like, it's a perfect marketing tactic, like that I was saying, like, you just put that exactly the way it is. People are going to go crazy with hype that'll hold them over.
I will say this, like, Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion is my favorite Final Fantasy. Like, now that I play, like, it really is. It's like, it's the one that stuck with me, like, in a way that I wasn't expecting. Because I remember when I told you, yeah, I'm finishing it.
Yeah.
And then I just sent you the memes of, like, the black guy, like, crying. I was like,
yeah.
God damn it, they got, like, they really got me. I wasn't expecting it. It's like,
and that's why I think, because I played that before playing any mainline Final Fantasy, and I was like, none of this is lining up as strong as what I played of this random PSP spin-off game.
Yeah.
And that, like,
I have this weird thing that I really like prequels. I don't know what it is that about me. I like prequels more sometimes than the original work that is usually so beloved. I think I just like the weight of what came before, like informing what it is now. It's like why I enjoy the Star Wars prequels so much, even though they're so derailed by the people that are such lovers of the original trilogy, which I love also. But it's like there's just something about something what comes before that can really punch up. Like even recently with House of the Dragon, I'm really liking how that informs like a lot of Game of Thrones later on. It's like there's something about backstory can really enrich your love or something, and
it really does. And I think I agree for the most part, because overall it's like, even if you're somebody who gets anxious about where a story can go, you almost, even if you don't like the way things started for the original whatever it is, it gives you an idea of where things are going to go, so you have that expectation the whole time, and then it pays off, as opposed to, once again, like you said, House of the Dragon, where Game of Thrones, you expected a certain direction for the story to go, and then it went a completely different one. So it like ruins how you viewed things because your expectations were broken in a wrong way.
Sometimes there is like prequels have like this safe idea that you know where a story goes, but sometimes knowing that a tangled tree can untangle itself to get to a specific point, if done well, can be really cool. It can be really cool and like clicking. Oh, so this is why this happens here, and
that's what
Crisis Core does that. So
absolutely. So yeah, that was That was my little moment for Crisis Core. I'm
which
glad
was
that
gonna, yeah,
you came in hot with yours, and I was like, you know what? You're right.
yeah,
Forget Call of Duty. That doesn't deserve anything
yeah.
higher than 5. Oh man. So yeah, that
I would
was
say
4 for
it.
both of
Yeah,
us.
yeah. It hurts seeing it as your number 5, but it's your list. Like, so.
Yeah,
And I mentioned my number 3 already, Horizon Forbidden West. So,
Right.
what's your number 3, Paul?
The Witcher 3.
Interesting. Another game you haven't
Next-gen
finished.
version. I would say I technically finished it forever ago. This being the reason for this is not only how strong the original game already was, but the level of quality of life changes and updates for this game made me put in 50 hours where I thought I was like, I'm gonna play a little bit of it, see where we go, see if I get to the DLC, and then I was like, oh no, I want to keep playing this every second I can.
I'll say this: I didn't put Witcher 3 in any of my lists, not because it was bad. It was just more like I wanted to give 2022 games a shine. But let me just say that the work CD Projekt Red did with Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, mighty impressive, mighty impressive as a next gen like version of this thing.
Yes.
It looks modern. It looks like it just came
really
out.
does. Yeah. And it felt so good to settle back into it, as like after everything that happened this year, to sit back with the warm blanket that is The Witcher 3, and where it just, the gameplay feels great, the additions feel great, the added like armor sets and stuff that they changed, and even like I've been watching these people that have been doing like Witcher 3 videos for 7 years or something. They've been doing additions to show how certain quests have changed. Dialogue is completely different. Um, like tweaking parts of the one of like the bad ending or something, and like actually changing parts of the core game in certain ways to just enhance different aspects of things, and then just seeing just the level of detail that I knew I loved back then and just fell back into love now about it. And how I think somebody that I follow on Twitter was talking about big games that really stuck with you and why. And one of the things that I commented was The Witcher 3, because even though it is this weird, really dark and horrible place, you are always rewarded for kindness. And it's like, at first you think that you need to be cruel and hard and uncaring, but the fact that the best way to get to the best endings of the game and for everybody to actually reward you is to actually be nice. And every once in a while you might get burned, but overall it always pays off. And that like really stuck with me. So yeah, that's it for me on the Witcher 3 as my number 3 spot, just because I just
So Paul, what's your number 2?
God of War.
Really? Okay.
Yep. It is it made it all the way up there because of how strong it was. This is that dueling thing for us. We knew what was going to be in one if we told us the other, and I think we both knew which one was going to be it for us. But yeah, in the end, God of War Ragnarok, because I loved every second of it. I loved the gameplay, I loved the story, I loved the continuation of everything, the characters, just all great. And then in the end, I think part of it is because I dropped it so quickly after I finished it and just couldn't keep playing it in some areas. That's all on me. So I don't want to give it any like disrespect towards them for that. But in the end, I guess how much do you want to like cross talk for this? Do we want to only talk about God of War right now and then talk about whatever else after, or
just talk it now? Let's talk about it now.
Okay, so this almost is going to become a comparison between the two, but I'm going to try to avoid that as best I can. For me, Elden Ring gave me that magic that I hadn't felt since like the first time I played The Legend of Zelda. And it was like just that kind of level of really exploring, really finding things out. Just the fact that it took me 2 months of constantly playing it and almost never feeling tired of it. There was just always something new, something weird to find. You come over a ridge and you see a walking mausoleum with a bell hanging down from it, and I'm like, who imagines this stuff? And
Mm-hmm.
you've got fire giants over here, and you've got literal hell, and then you've got this really gorgeous, magical Hogwarts style academy, and it's everything that I always used to love when I first played like Dark Souls, and it made it most accessible that I've ever seen, and so fun for me. So that's like my initial opening arguments for that. Go ahead and talk about your side of all this.
So my number 2 is Elden Ring, and my number 1 is God of War Ragnarok. So we're both flipped.
Yes.
I'll say this. Elden Ring is the best game I played in 2022.
Yeah.
God of War Ragnarok is my favorite game I played in 2022.
Right.
Elden Ring could have been both had Radagon and the Elden Beast not destroyed poisoned the final taste for me near the end. But when it comes to like an experience that is gonna define 2022 and it's gonna define a lot of gaming going forward, is like Elden Ring. It's like there's a reason why Elden Ring right now has become the how can I say this, like the most rewarded game of all time. It even beat Last of Us Part 2, and I'm like, yes. Even though that was my game of the year in 2020, hearing that it was the most rewarded game felt wrong for me for that one. I was like, Elden Ring feels like more deserving for that kind of game because it feels like it's gonna change what we think about open worlds going forward. Like the level of imagination of Elden Ring, the things I found in my New Game Plus run that I finished recently. In fact, I did my New Game Plus run just to make sure if I was gonna, because I kept wavering back and forth between Elden Ring and God of War is my
how much distance and damage you did to replaying Elden Ring all over again, as opposed to me who only played it once.
Yeah,
because I didn't want to go back and play that final boss. I'll be honest.
Yes, and that's the thing. Like that final boss is like the reason why I'm like, in principle, I could say Elden Ring being the best game I played this year should be the number 1 game I played this year. My mind doesn't work like that. It's like at no point did I tell God of War Ragnarok to go F itself. Like I have pictures of me flipping the finger to Elden Ring after I beat the Elden Beast back in like May. But that's the thing, like that was just like the final taste, like sour taste of a game that I played for 3 months. I went to bed at like at 3 a.m. almost every day, just like exploring it, like finding more and more and more and more with Elden Ring. Like some of those boss fights, like I'll say this, like I even say this, like I feel Elden Ring is the worst Dark Souls when it comes to like boss design, because it feels like it's a game where like Miyazaki and the crew were like, we're giving you all this aid with the summons and all that, we're not gonna care about like pattern recognitions anymore, just like get at it. And I feel like that kind of sucks, because it's like if you want to play those bosses like in a legit way without like the aids, they're not as satisfying to conquer as previous Dark Souls, that you could like read them well and know, okay, this is the time where they're gonna do. They have like way too many movements. But I would say like when it comes to like, it's Elden Ring, I feel the same way as Zelda in a way. It's like if you think about it in the old way, what they used to do, they're worse. When you think about it in what they're doing new, they're the best they've ever done. And I like open worlds feel boring now after Elden Ring. Like open worlds feel like the level of discovery you get with Elden Ring, like how it empowers you to discover those things, and then the chance you can have like, hey, do you go to this mountain where you climb up? Like you can completely like go straight to the Altus Plateau and not have to go through the elevator in this other thing. And there's this dragon that you fight there, that then when you beat that, then you see the other dragon that has like the red like Zeus electricity that just meets you when you go there. It's like the level of stories that you can tell about Elden Ring, like
it calls back to me those days in the 2000s when you used to play through those games that you used to consider like the game to play, and you'd talk with your friends at lunch. And like, hey, you remember if you go to the basement and you knock 3 times on this thing, you get a secret room that accesses this cool weapon. And like Elden Ring's the first game in like 20 years that I could believe somebody when they tell me that, where I'm like, yeah, that I could see somebody doing something like that. I mean, just look at the weird mansion where you had the one wall that you had to hit 1,000,000 times to unlock it. And it's just weird creative stuff that I think I noticed a trend here where it's like, yeah, the lows were really low,
but the highs were really high.
Were so high that it made it somehow better than God of War in just certain specific aspects enough that I value really high. And if you
Mm-hmm.
look at my top 10, it's a sliding scale of what
Mm-hmm.
it made my heart feel.
Yeah.
And if you look at it, you see where my heart just slowly started to have more and more affection for it. Midnight Suns
Mm-hmm.
probably would even surpass Modern Warfare 2 if I continue to like it.
Uh-huh.
But like, as I felt certain things of heights and heights and heights, Elden Ring just hit the highest of those for me. And even though there's certain aspects like the final boss really upset me, there was so much else to that game that I could just pick all of the any one of those other things that I enjoyed myself on.
Yeah.
Whereas something like, I hit the same problem with like Metroid Dread back in the day, because there's not enough else besides that
Mm-hmm.
final boss really messing me up that made me really sour on it. But Elden Ring had so many other things. It kind
Yeah.
of caught itself.
And that's the thing, like Elden Ring was lower in my list, actually.
Really?
And the
And then
new
you
game,
replayed it.
and the replay, I was like, you know what? It's like, this game is just fantastic, and I put it there. It's just that I cried with God of War Ragnarok. The story of that, like the story that game told, resonated with me so hard.
Yeah,
The
let's talk
vibe,
about that.
yeah, the vibes that it put out, like I never expected a God of War to be like a God of War game to be the most wholesome experience I had in the year. Like a game that like rejects nihilism for hope, a game that like that imparts such great lessons, a game that like its highs are so high and the catharsis you feel is so high. And for me, that I prefer linear experiences over open worlds. It's like God of War Ragnarok is like peak for the kind of game that I really love, with something like with the best story of the year, and like with such majesty and visuals and combat and soundtrack. The songs of that game was like so, especially Elden Ring and God of War soundtrack are both immaculate. I even argued that I feel like I would even have given Elden Ring the soundtrack win at the Game Awards because God of War won it. But it's like there's just something about God of War as a complete package for me that just like hit me right on the soul. Like the ending of that game is like that, just like it really stuck with me, just like from a story perspective. Like, man, having followed Kratos since 2005 and seeing like the path he has ahead now, like as this reformed character that used to be just a machine of vengeance into now that machine of like of redemption and hope, and seeing that, just like that stuck with me more, especially like this complementing the game that rescued me into keeping gaming.
Fully
Like
completing that circle.
it completes that circle. It's like God of War 2018, like it's the reason why I'm still playing games today. And Ragnarok, like completing that story to like redefine. No, there was a reason why why God of War like brought you back into gaming, to be able to see this story through, and just the improvements they made with combat, like the spear combat is just perfect. The side content, some side content you were not even able to experience because you didn't follow my instructions correctly. If like follow the dog, follow it to the completion, then when you're in that area, leave. And because trying to for you to find the crater now, which is such a incredible area, and you won't be able to because the compass of this game sucks, and you have such horrible sense of direction. So it's like there's just so much stuff of this game that just felt so meticulously authored that everything that was there felt like it had a purpose. That even though Elden Ring was like it's something that's gonna stick up in my mind as like the magical next step in gaming, for what I like about games like God of War Ragnarok is like the peak for me for the linear action adventure game with exploration, basically. But when it comes to open worlds, Elden Ring like reignited my love for open worlds. Because remember, last year I didn't even play a single one other than Halo Infinite. Well, the previous year. And this year I went back harder. And I'm still stuck playing open world games. I'm like in Valhalla land.
All over again, man. I will absolutely give it to you that, like, in the realm of character and story, Elden Ring cannot hold a candle to God of War Ragnarok.
And it wasn't trying to. And they wasn't trying to.
Yeah,
They're apples
absolutely.
and oranges. Yeah.
That's exactly, I think, what the cool thing is, that both of these can be Game of the Year for very different reasons. And they're equally, and I cannot say that normally, they're equally deserving of, based on who you are, what that Game of the Year is. And like, depending on the day, it could be God of War Ragnarok, especially for the context of what you're asked about. It's like, well, yeah, did you enjoy the story more? It's like, absolutely, God of War undoubtedly. But then it's like those little moments of the discovery almost and creativity. Then it's like maybe it's Elden Ring, maybe it's not. So yeah,
that's why.
I think
That's
overall,
why. Yeah, if we were have to like give a game of the year like consensus between both of us, I would say Elden Ring, just for what 2022 means. If you're asking me what my personal favorite game of this year was, it was God of War Ragnarok, a game that I enjoyed from moment 1 to moment 100. Elden Ring I enjoyed from moment 1 to moment 99. It was just so that's my only thing.
Valid.
Yeah. So and that's why I say like Elden Ring is like this gonna be imitated. I feel like even more than Breath of the Wild, I feel Elden Ring is gonna be an even bigger like template for the future open world games, and I'm excited for that because I tell you, especially because I showed you the portable dock that I bought recently. I don't know if you can see it.
It's kind of it's like blurring itself somehow.
Yeah, there you go.
There it is.
There it goes. Which
that was for the Switch, wasn't it?
Yeah, for the Switch. Because I didn't bring my dock, and this one is like shorter and can convert to 4K better than the other one.
Which is kind of cool that people have figured out that aftermarket side of it, that you don't even need the dock that the Switch is supposed to be made
because
for.
It sucks. That sucks. And this one is like so tiny. So look, it's even better. That's how it is.
How much was that?
It was $29.99, $30.
What?
Yeah. So.
Oh my gosh! I'm gonna go buy that now.
Do it. It's on Amazon. I'll link you to it so you can buy it because it's so much easier. It's like the Switch is like more displayed. The other one can get scratched if you're not like putting it correctly.
Right. If you don't put it in exactly right, especially if you put on anything on the back of your Switch, it's too wide.
Mm-hmm. So I went back to Breath of the Wild because I wanted to, especially with Tears of the Kingdom coming out this year. I wanted to play it. Yeah, I went back to it a little bit yesterday, and I'm like, yes, this walked, but for Elden Ring to run, because it's like Elden Ring just feels such a cooler world to explore compared to Breath of the Wild's Hyrule.
I didn't think that was possible because Breath of the Wild like made me feel things that I hadn't felt in a long time either.
It does. The thing is that now like the issues of Breath of the Wild are like putting more stark contrast, because it's cool to play an open world game like Elden Ring that has that level of like author discovery and not have to worry about your fucking weapons breaking.
Ain't that a thing?
Yeah, and like especially in the weapons, like 5 hits, it's done. Mm-hmm. That's the problem with Breath of the Wild, and how Elden Ring now took that formula to the next level and showed people it's like, hey, like Breath of the Wild had really cool ideas. Ignore all the survival bullshit they added. It's like, look what can be done when like you overimpose a Dark Souls game in that case with a world that's so meticulously designed that we don't even put any icons at all. You can like discover by yourself because
there's
yeah, exactly. So that's why I feel like Elden Ring is the game of 2022. Like looking from it from a bird's eye view of like how it's gonna influence gaming. It's just in that tiny detail where I'm like, as a personal thing, that was not my personal favorite, but I can like look at it objectively and think Elden Ring is the number one.
Can you imagine if the people that are now working on Tears of the Kingdom did not learn the right lessons?
I bet you they're not. I bet you they're not. And I wonder how the reviewers, all that declared Breath of the Wild the greatest game of all time for some reason, are gonna like judge it on. And we only have 4 months to find out, Paul. But that's for the 10 most anticipated games coming next week. But yeah, overall, Paul, read your 10 to 1 for.
Yeah, so 10 to 1, Horizon Forbidden West, 9 Destiny 2 The Witch Queen, 8 Sifu, 7 Evil West, 6 Midnight Suns, 5 Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, 4 Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion, 3 The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt Next Gen version, 2 God of War Ragnarok, and 1 Elden Ring. And now for yours.
And with mine is number 10 Stranger of Paradise, a Final Fantasy Origin, number 9 Destiny 2 The Witch Queen, number 8 Evil West, number 7 Sonic Frontiers, number 6 Kirby and the Forgotten Land, number 5 The Last of Us Part 1, number 4 Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion, number 3 Horizon Forbidden West, number 2 Elden Ring, and number 1 God of War Ragnarok. Overall, looking at that list, what a good year.
We ate good, even though it was really poorly spread out.
Great year. Great selection of games. Good year.
Yes, absolutely. Do you want me to go ahead and read whatever's coming out this week?
Yes, we're gonna read the release because of when we're coming back. We're gonna read all the releases from January 9th all the way to January 20th, so we can kind of cover our bases. And then when we come back next week for our top 10 most anticipated games, we read the next week and go from there. How we've been doing it. Paul, take it away.
All right. So game releases from, like you said,
January 9th to the 20th. Yeah.
So, Children of Silent Town coming to PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Switch, PC on January 11th. Cartrider Drift, PC, iOS, and Android, January 11th. Lone Ruin for Switch and PC, January 12th. Vengeful Guardian, Moonrider, PlayStation 5, PlayStation 4, Switch, PC, January 12th. Dragon Ball Z Kakarot,
next-gen
versions for obviously PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S on January 13th. One Piece Odyssey, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, PC.
Time out. It's hilarious that Dragon Ball Z and One Piece are coming out the exact same day.
It is very interesting, honestly. You're one of two camps on this.
I know.
But both equally valid in their own way. Gigantosaurus, Dino Card for PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Switch, PC on January 17th. A Space for the Unbound, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 4, Xbox Switch, PC, everything.
On January
19th. Colossal Cave, PS5, Xbox Series X and S, Switch, PC, January 19th. Persona 4 Golden coming to Xbox Series X and S, PS4, Xbox One, and Switch. Does that
and Game Pass. And Game Pass. Huh?
And Game Pass. Does that mean there's no PS5 version?
And not right now. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yes.
And then January 19th for that. Shin Megami Tensei Persona 3 Portable, Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Switch, PC, January
and
19th.
also on Game Pass.
I'm assuming. Fire Emblem Engage on the Switch, January 20th, and Monster Hunter Rise finally coming to PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 4, Xbox One on January 20th, already out on PC and Switch. And then lastly, Pocket Card Jockey Ride On iOS for January 20th.
From this entire list, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is definitely one that I'm gonna die because I saw the video comparisons that they released at TGS of the PS4 version and the PS5 version. It's insane, the jump, and I never really played it, and I bought it on a sale back then just to be ready for the free upgrade, so I'm definitely gonna play that. Monster Hunter Rise is another one that I really want to try. That's gonna be on Game Pass, and there's some leftover money mistakenly there in our account after we mistook Crisis Core for a $60 game when it was $50.
Right.
So that's one that I was thinking maybe we could, especially if we want to play like the best version, because it's definitely going to be better than a Series S, even though that's going to be on Game Pass. We could do the arrangement there for that one. So
but Monster Hunter Rise is definitely going to be one I'm going to keep an eye out for. Fire Emblem Engage for a lot of people, maybe not me personally. One Piece Odyssey I'm going to keep a real close eye on because that seems perfect, tailor-made for a concept.
I want to hear it from PJ because he is one that I would trust on the Dragon Quest opinions of RPGs. So I don't trust him in anything else, but that would be one.
One last tentative mention: the Vengeful Guardian Moonrider. I actually looked that up, and it's like a really interesting, like Symphony of the Night looking game.
Whoa! Don't do that to me. Don't like.
It's just take a look at the gameplay.
Oh shoot.
So that kind of had my curiosity, honestly. But we'll see how that plays out in the next coming weeks.
Well, I tell you, because we're gonna do 10 most anticipated games of what we know of 2023. This year's gonna be insane. Just on the first 6 months alone.
Packed. Oh man. So that's it. That's everything going on. We talked about everything that came out last year. Woo!
There you go.
Oh man.
So 2022, you can like take a curtain call. I wish you were a better year overall, but what a great year for games.
What you were was still pretty nice, honestly.
Yeah, so now 2023 is coming to play now. It's really coming to play for all of them.
Like, my big brother's coming and he could beat your big brother up kind of energy, because 2023 is coming in swinging, I tell you.
Yeah, but that will be fun to talk about next week, especially like if our special guest follows through, because he said he wanted to do that one for us. There you go. But I'll give you more details on that. But Paul, where can people find you?
As always, y'all can find me at Dork of Art on Twitter. It's where I post posting videos of breaking games and usually memes and art. Where can they find you, Alejandro?
They can find me at _Josegovia on Twitter, at asegovia on Hive, at Alejandro Segovia 93 on Instagram, and my written content at both thecriticalcorner.com and over at seasongaming.com. So, and whenever we stream sometime this year at twitch.tv/theslayergiant. Paul, I'm glad we're back at the swing of things. We recorded this one early. I'm gonna hope that I can get some cool edits for this one, and then see you next week for the year that'll be. Hopefully nothing crazy breaks like it happened last year around this time. Remember?
Yeah, I remember a lot of things happening last few years around this time. So
yeah,
really hoping we get a bit more quietness this time.
I doubt it with the kind of year that's coming. So
yeah, but I can always at least try to hopefully say.
We're in it. Everyone else, we're glad that you're here to follow us into the new year, into a new season, and we're expecting big and good things for this year. So Paul, always a pleasure doing this with you. Everyone else, stay healthy, stay safe, and have a great rest of this year. And remember,
sex
to play.
Good night, everybody.
Hasta la vista, baby.